You know what nobody tells you about chasing your dreams? Sometimes the very thing you prayed for ends up suffocating you. There's something about old Hollywood that looks so perfect from the outside. Golden lights, elegant gowns, stars on every corner. But once you look a little closer, it gets darker, more controlled, especially if you were a woman trying to fight for good roles in a system built to silence you. Bette Davis is one of those names I always thought represented power. Strong, dramatic, unshakable. But the reality? For a long time, she wasn't in control of her career at all. She was stuck in a contract that basically treated her like property, not a performer. And what blows my mind is how early she realized it. She knew her talent was being wasted and wasn't afraid to call it out, even if it meant going head-to-head with one of the biggest studios in the industry. And the crazy part? She didn't even win the legal battle, but somehow, she still changed the game. You know how some people are just born to be a storm? That was Bette Davis. And I'm not even exaggerating, there's this wild little fact that lightning literally struck a tree outside her childhood home the moment she was born. And oh boy, she did. Before she became the legendary Bette Davis, she was Ruth Elizabeth Bette Davis from Lowell, Massachusetts. Her childhood was marked by hardship, parents separating, strict boarding schools, and a mother chasing artistic dreams in New York. Inspired by Balzac's La Cousine Bette, she renamed herself and chased the stage. Early rejections didn't rattle her. She was told she lacked a physical appeal and was dismissed as too modest, too plain. Yet she pushed on. Broadway gave her a taste of performance, and by 1930, she was in Hollywood, where her first screen test failed, and studio execs couldn't even recognize her as an actress. But Bette wasn't there to blend in. She was there to break through. What followed wasn't an overnight rise, but a storm building, and once she hit the screen, no one could look away. And this is what I find fascinating about Bette, is that from the very beginning, she wasn't the typical Hollywood beauty. Studio execs didn't know what to do with her. Universal hired her, then dropped her just as quickly. They didn't get her. Didn't know how to market a woman with brains, presence, and sharp edges. But then came Warner Brothers. And honestly, they weren't much better. At least not at first. They shoved her into roles she hated. Mediocre scripts, shallow characters, and directors who just didn't get her. But Bette? She didn't stay quiet and play nice like a well-behaved woman was expected to. Nope. She fought. Loudly. Repeatedly. One of my favorite things she did early on? She demanded to be loaned out for the film of Human Bondage. That movie wasn't even backed by Warner Brothers. But Bette knew it was the kind of role that would actually let her act, not just stand around looking pretty in a dress. She pushed Jack Warner to approve it, and the performance ended up changing her entire career. That role made people finally sit up and go, wait, who is she? She won her first Oscar soon after, for Dangerous. But even then, she called the movie forgettable. Like, winning an Academy Award and still thinking the film didn't deserve you. But despite her success, she was still stuck in a contract that gave her zero creative control. Warner Brothers had her locked in. They chose the movies, the directors, and the scripts. And more often than not, they picked quantity over quality, just cashing in on her popularity instead of respecting her craft. And if you know anything about Bette by now, you can guess that didn't sit well with her. She wasn't just going to smile through it and play nice. That fire, that lightning strike energy, it was about to explode, and not just behind the scenes. Now, this is the part where I low-key fell even more in love with Bette, not just as an actress, but as a whole force of nature. By the mid-1930s, Bette was sick of being treated like a pawn. She wasn't some studio puppet you could pull out and place into whatever lifeless role you needed filled that week. She was an artist, and honestly, she knew her worth long before Hollywood was ready to admit it. So, what did she do? Well, instead of suffering in silence like most stars were forced to do, she flipped the script. Bette packed her bags and ran off to England, planning to work on 2 films without Warner Bros.' approval. Bold, right? But yeah, also a direct breach of her contract. Warner Bros. Lost it. They took her to court, dragging her across the ocean into a legal mess that made headlines around the world. And just to set the scene, this wasn't some quiet backroom lawsuit. Bette was literally fleeing legal papers. At one point, she escaped to Canada to avoid being served. Warner Brothers claimed she was being greedy, that she just wanted more money. But she saw it differently. In her own words, she felt like an underpaid slave locked into a life sentence, with zero say in the kind of work she wanted to do. She was earning about $1,250 a week, which sounded like a lot back then. But she had no control over her image, her roles, or even her political stance if the studio decided to make her support something she didn't believe in. Her contract allowed Warner to suspend her if she refused a role, then extend her contract by that same amount of time. Basically, if she didn't play by their rules, they'd just tack on more time like she was doing a prison sentence. What kind of messed up logic is that? The court, sadly, didn't side with her. Warner Brothers won the case in the English courts. The judge agreed that she had signed the contract willingly, twice actually, and said that her decision to leave was based on no discoverable reason except that she wanted more money. The British press tore her apart too, calling her ungrateful and overpaid. Even the studio's lawyer mocked her by saying, "If anyone wants to put me in perpetual servitude for $1,350 a week, I'd consider it." Like being publicly shamed for standing up for creative freedom. But even though she lost the legal battle, she ended up winning something way bigger. When she returned to Warner Brothers, they finally started taking her seriously. They gave her better roles. And that's when her most iconic performances started rolling in. Jezebel, which won her another Oscar. Dark Victory. Now, Voyager. The Little Foxes. These weren't just films. They were legends. And she made them legendary. She once said, "I lost the battle, but I won the war." And she meant it. That lawsuit didn't crush her. It cemented her status. It proved she had guts, brains, and the sheer will to demand better. And honestly, if Warner Brothers had just listened to her in the first place instead of trying to control her, they probably could have saved themselves the drama and the embarrassment of eventually letting her go. Because a few years later, after yet another terrible role in Beyond the Forest, Davis finally had enough. She begged not to play the part, but Jack Warner refused. The movie bombed, critics blamed her, and Warner finally gave up. After 18 years, she was free. And what did she do with that freedom? She starred in All About Eve, a film that earned a record-breaking 14 Oscar nominations and immortalized her as Margot Channing, one of the most iconic characters in cinema history. If that's not the ultimate comeback, I don't know what is. Looking back at Bette Davis's journey, it's hard not to be in awe. She didn't just survive the studio system, she shook its very foundation. Most stars of that era quietly endured, afraid of losing their spotlight. Even though the court ruled against her and she was forced to return to Warner Brothers, something shifted. The fight changed her. It gave her leverage. It made people pay attention. Suddenly, the woman they underestimated was in control of her own narrative. And from that moment on, we saw Bette Davis at her most powerful, fierce, unfiltered, and completely unapologetic. Honestly, I think about how many people would have just backed down. She could have faded into the background, just another name caught in the gears of Hollywood's golden machine. But instead, she rose. Proof that talent, grit, and vision will always outlast short-term losses. And let's not forget, this was a woman fighting for creative freedom decades before it became common. In many ways, she set the stage for what stars like Olivia de Havilland and even current actors now enjoy. The right to say no, the right to choose better, the right to fight back. I'll be real with you, her story. It's not just Hollywood history, it's a masterclass in self-respect. Sometimes you lose the case, but you win the career. And more than that, you win your voice back. If you enjoyed this rebellion, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more bold stories they didn't want you to hear. And don't forget to comment down below. I'd love to hear what you think. Was Davis reckless or revolutionary? Either way, she was unforgettable, and that's a win in any era.